Alright, this is video 2. Hopefully this one's going to be better. It's probably going to have better sound, better video quality. Alright, apologize ahead of time. Sounds, distractions that might come up. It's very likely. I live in a busy area that's got quite a bit of foot traffic and sounds around, helicopters, planes, and whatnot. But I'm going to try to go into this and cover a little bit more about me and my walk of faith. This here is my Bible, as you guys may have seen in my first video. It was given to me by my mother in 1989. So I've had this for a long time. I've read it. I've always felt moved to read this. Never wanted to go to another Bible, that is. I shouldn't say that. Never wanted to give this one up for a better one in better shape. I've read other Bibles, contemporary English version, the NIV, but I never really got fed spiritually by those. It was the King James version, that one in particular, that has led me to a better understanding. Okay. With that said, with growing up in the church and going to 2 Christian academies as a kid, never really fully applied myself in my spiritual walk until I got older. Let's say in 2007, the beginning of 2007, I wanted to grow my faith to a whole nother level, higher than any I'd seen before. And I was getting in the Word about, paraphrasing, going out into a tent. Basically going out into the wilderness and just be me and Him, me and God, me and the Lord, to grow my faith. Well, at this particular time, it was cold. It was in the winter of 2007, at the beginning. Anybody knows about Columbus, Ohio, in that year, it was bad. There was 20 inches of snow outside. Not your best time to go sleep in the tent. But I chose to go ahead and do it because I felt moved to. So I got a cart. I was staying at my mother's at the time. Me and my ex had split up, and ex-girlfriend had split up at the time. And I was living here at my mother's for a short while until I got on my feet. But I was wanting to, get out from underneath my mother's roof and be a man. So I decided to go ahead and step up and do what I felt moved to do spiritually, is to go sleep in a tent. So I got a cart, one of those little pull behind carts that you see people with carrying groceries and whatnot. And so I got that, and I got me some blankets, shipping blankets, and my tent, and some other odds and ends things, obviously toilet paper, things that I could need. Didn't take food that I remember. So I went ahead and gathered up my stuff and took off on a walk. I asked God, I was like, Lord, Father, guide my feet where I need to go, Lord, where you would have me be, to where I can grow my faith. So I took off on a walk. I walked up the street, and I just kept walking and wasn't really getting anything in particular at first, but came upon the railroad tracks not too far from my mother's, probably about a half a mile or so away. I decided to walk up the side of the tracks, the big hill that led up to the tracks. Well, let me tell you, climbing up that hill was not easy, especially pulling a cart behind you and 20 inches of snow. that was above my knees. That was interesting. Oh, I said a few words that I won't say on here, but I was not exactly thrilled about that particular walk at that time with what I was going through. But that's what I wanted. That's what I was signing up for. So I went ahead and got up the side of the hill. After I made it up the hill through struggles, I started walking up the tracks. Well, Lord, where should I go? And I just kept on walking, and probably about another half mile or so, maybe a mile up the tracks, come upon a place where there was it was fenced in, and I decided well, I felt by faith that's where I should go. It was in the corner of this lot where they had semi-trailers. It was plumb full of semi-trailers, but I wanted to get inside there and find a spot where no one can just walk up on me easily, like, just people just walking by and, disturb me or my stuff. But I climbed down the side of the hill. Struggle number 2. Went down the side of the hill, got up underneath the fence. I was squatting. I'll go ahead and say that. Please do not judge me by that, because that's what I was doing. Basically breaking the law. And many people probably have their own judgment on that, but that's between you and God. So I got inside there, and I happened to see the last trailer right next to the fence. And it was a green trailer, all the rest of them were white, but this one kind of stood out, and there was a big hole cut out in the side of it. I mean, it was pretty good long hole. It was cut like probably 4 feet wide or 4 feet high in the section this way, and probably about 20 feet that way. Big hole cut out. I'm like, so climbed up on the tire of the semi-trailer, looked inside the hole, and I could see like little trash scattered around, and outside the trailer there was a bunch of trash and stuff laying around. And I was like, well, somebody's been here before me. Somebody had something set up here. And I was like, well, this looks like a good spot. I felt comfortable. I didn't feel like, I was going to be disturbed too much. So I went ahead and climbed inside, brought everything from my cart inside, and I set up my tent inside that trailer. I looked at the benefit of not worrying about getting rained on, snowed on, up out of the blowing cold air. It was still outside. Still had that big hole cut out, so I wasn't completely out of the elements. It was enough that it was a little easier than would it be if I would have just set my tent up in the ground somewhere in 20 inches of snow. Whew. So I did that. Each day was different, obviously. I ended up getting up every morning, praying, reading His Word. I was diligent about my walk of faith at that time. I would love at that time. I was eating it up. I couldn't get enough. I was just constantly reading His Word and praying. And I was doing like King David did when he was. That was one of the things that I had a hymns book, hymns. It had music in it that you could sing with, like most churches got in their auditorium. So I would sing to God, the Lord. I would even dance like King David did. Why not? I mean, I was reading stories in the Word that, others had done. Why shouldn't I? I figured there had to be a blessing in it. So I did. I'd sing to him. There was nobody around. It was just me in that tent, in that trailer, singing to God, praying, earnestly. So, but there was days when I'd come out from the trailer, which was pretty much every day. I don't think maybe once I stayed the whole day inside the trailer. I always would want to go out and seek those lost sheep, those who needed to hear God's voice, those that wasn't hearing it, or those that wasn't, in a good spot in their life and they're just wanting a blessing, didn't know what it was, kind of thing, so I would go out on my little adventure, on a spiritual walk, and pray, Lord, Father, guide me to someone who needs you, someone who needs prayer, things along them lines. And I would get pretty discouraged a lot of times because I wouldn't find the individual. I would ask for confirmation most often of where I should go, and I wasn't always getting a clear answer. It was more of just taking a step of faith. Well, in that time, with it being winter and 20 inches of snow outside, now picture walking around in 20 inches of snow outside and you coming back to your tent in the winter and getting your tent. I took my shoes off. Let me tell you, that was a humbling experience. I took my shoes off and laid them outside my tent. And as I'm laying there, of course, doing my reading and stuff, and reading by candlelight, that was cool. And so, anyways, the next morning I'd gotten up and I realized one of my first mistakes is what happens to shoes when they get wet and they sit outside in the winter. As you can imagine, they froze solid like a brick. Now what am I going to do? I'm in this tent, no other shoes, I just had those. What did I have to do? I had to put them on. Well, how do you do that? They're frozen. They don't bend, they don't flex. So what did I do? I had to beat them on the bottom of that trailer floor just to soften them up, just enough. Bam, bam, bam. I'm hitting them all different ways, just flexing them. I'm like, all right, now I think they're flexible enough. Put my feet in it. Man, it was like putting my feet in blocks of ice. Well, took off on a walk. My feet were so cold. Oh my word. Oh, that blowed. It really did. Walking around like that, I was coming to tears. That's how bad my feet hurt, because they was so cold. And picture trying to walk around, and it just so happened to be that I think it was on Sunday at that time, and there was nothing around warm. I used to go to the library to sit and, get warm and hang out and read. It was a warm setting. But I couldn't find nowhere, and it was just like, man, what am I going to do? But with that was a humbling experience. But I ended up finding somewhere. I think I came to my mom's house. I was trying to avoid going to my mom's as much as possible. I mean, I really was. Well, this went on. I mean, I had that tent set up there for over 2 years, probably close to 2.5 years. I had that tent set up there. Nobody messed with my tent. Nobody came there. No one bothered. Not even the people that owned the property didn't even bother me. I mean, if there was times I've heard people walking around out there and talking, but they was off in the distance, not close. But nonetheless, I continued my walk of faith, and I remember the one day it was still in that same winter. I walked over to one of the churches that gave out food and, essentials to people that was homeless, which I was by choice, wasn't made to. And anyways, I was at the church, I was hanging outside waiting my turn. At that time, I had socks on my hands for gloves. And I had gotten my lunch bag and got me a cup of coffee. I'm sitting there holding it, drinking it. And there was a gentleman that walked up to me and we started conversating. Turns out he was walking by faith too, just in a different type of way, but he was still walking it. He got to talking to me and stuff, and I'm like, I was attracted to the spirit. The spirit, our spirits connected. I'm like, okay. He asked me if I was willing to receive prayer. I was like, yeah. I'd love to have prayer. So he prayed for me. I was gotten pretty emotional at that time. I felt there was a blessing in it. Well, he told me that he was sleeping in a church not too far from where we was at, another church. I was like, wow, you're sleeping in a church? And he said, yeah, he'd got permission from the people who was the church owners, that he had gotten permission to sleep there because he had come from, I think it was like Chillicothe at the time, and he'd come there and was walking by faith, similar story, wanting to walk by faith and do God's work. We went to the church. It was amazing. He was able to get in the church. There was nobody in there but me and him. That was cool. I was pretty taken back being in a church under that type of circumstance with no other people around. It was just us. He wasn't even the pastor of the church. Well, he wanted to go downstairs to the basement area and break bread. We did. Well, we was wanting to stay in contact, and the only way we can do that is 1-800-prayer. So we would just basically, in orders to get in contact, or I knew where he was at that particular, well, I shouldn't say particular, but at different times, I could go there and possibly find him. But he had already said that the pastor didn't want nobody inside that church but him, so he didn't really have permission to have me in there. Which, walking by faith, let's lean on faith here. So I tried to avoid going to that church looking for him. Oftentimes he wouldn't even be there anyways. He was out walking by faith, going, praying for people and whatnot. And so whenever we would want to meet up, I would pray, Lord, Father, have us line up somewhere so we could fellowship, do God's work. 99.9% of the time, it wasn't long or very far I had to go to find him. I'd walk around a corner, boom, there he was. What? Ha! Lord is good. So we'd go on our spiritual walks. He would show me the different things that God had led him to, by faith, to know and to do. And one of them is going out and praying for people. Well, I seen by the way he was talking and the faith that God had given me and him, this man was truly walking by faith. There was no question to me whatsoever. This man was truly a man of God. Nobody could have convinced me otherwise. I don't care who he was. I just seen it. Too many things he said and did that, showed me. So after a while of us doing this, going out praying for people, it was very encouraging. You know, I remember I kind of backslid a little bit. You know, at the time I was. Hang on a second here. One of these pause times for a second. Get a drink. I don't want it to be on the camera. Okay, sorry about that. I'm drinking coffee. I didn't want it to. I didn't want him to know what I had done. You know, I keep it real. I'm be myself. I'm not gonna be somebody that somebody else wants me to be. I'm gonna be myself. I'm gonna tell you about me. I was smoking weed. I had just recently started smoking at that time, and of course, you know, I understand how God may look at it, but I did it. You know, He convicted me. You know, and He said, it says in the Word, confess your faults one to another, pray for one another, and thou may be healed. And, well, so I confessed my fault. Boy, there was some chastisement in his words with what I had just told him. So I was like, whoa, I don't want to do that again. Which is good. Don't judge the man. Unless you walked in his shoes and done things he had done to get his faith. Don't judge him. So, I got my chastisement. Well, what did I do? I ended up doing it again. Short while later. At that point, I was like, now I'm like, I don't want to get convicted. I don't want him to chastise me with his words. So, took off on I had a bike at this particular time. It started getting a little warm weather, I think, at this point. So I seen him, and I'm on my bike, and I'm like, I gotta run from him. I don't want him to convict me. I don't want him to know what I've been doing. So I took off right in the opposite direction of him. He's walking this way. I'm heading this way. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm trying to make it over to my mom's house. And I come around a corner. I don't even know how. This is God. Come around a corner, going the opposite direction, mind you. There he is popping up. How did that happen? I'm on a bike, hauling Dickens the other way, and he pops up around the corner the opposite direction he was walking. There he is. What? I'm like, whoa. He didn't see me. He said, believe by faith he did. So I took off going the opposite direction of that. I'm still trying to make it back to my mother's. I come around another corner, boom, there he is again. I'm like, what the? Come on. This happens like 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, oh, man. So I'm getting closer, to my mother's. I ended up making it to my mother's. I'm like, I'm home. Well, to my mother's. So I started to come in the back door, or the gate, my mom's, and I opened up the gate and started taking my bike in, and there he is. There he is. I'm like, oh, he sees me. He's like, hey, brother, hey, you got a minute? I'm like, yeah. I'm laughing because the irony, the odds, man, it's all God. So he comes walking up to me. He said, man, I just want to let you know, man. I said, I don't know why, but I just feel moved to tell you about this. Okay. He said, I was watching a episode of South Park, and the teacher had brought in a bag of weed to show the class. He says, the teacher handed it to one of the students, and he says, and the student handed it to somebody else, and by the time it just disappeared. Don't know where it went. I'm like, he's like, yeah, I don't know why, I just felt moved to tell you that. So have a good day. It went on. I'm like, What was in that? That's stumped me. I'm like, did God tell him what I'd been doing? Because he had told me previously before that. He says, God tells me, things about you, and I don't want to know. He said, that's what he told me. I believed it because the things he was saying was something only God could have told him, because I wasn't telling him these things. And it wasn't a confession at that point. He had no clue. God knew. He didn't. So I'm like, whoa, okay, all right. So I got that understanding of what God was wanting me to know, that I might have been hiding it. God seen, and he made sure that I knew that he could let other people know as well. All right, outside that, here's another story. My wife would be at work, and she would come home oftentimes and would be completely upset. Called me even, this, years later. And me and my wife, after I met her, we ended up getting married. And so we ended up, she called me up crying, telling me about her boss, how he was an atheist, and basically just mocking God, getting crude and rude towards my wife over her faith in God and him being an atheist. Ooh, let me tell you, that angered me. Who are you gonna talk to my wife like that? That's my wife. If I don't talk to her like that, you sure in the heck ain't. We've been married 16 years, and I've never called my wife out her name. But anyways, she ended up, was crying and upset over it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do what my faith tells me to do. Bring it up to God. Pray on it. So I did. I got down on my knees every day. Didn't tell my wife. Didn't tell my spiritual brother / spiritual authority. I didn't tell him either. Didn't tell nobody. I didn't want the enemy to come in and take it away or try to intervene in some way. But I got down every day. I want to say, I know it was for a week, but I want to say it was closer to 2 weeks. I'm praying this prayer against this man. I even had tears in my eyes when I was praying because it was upsetting me that much. The old me, I'd have walked in there and knocked his head off his shoulders. That's the old me. It's not what God wants. Bless them and curse them not. Well, so I got down on my knees, like I say, every day and was praying against this man. And like I said, I wasn't telling nobody. All of a sudden, one day, I hear a knock at the door. I'm like, okay. So I walk over, I look through the peephole, this living in an apartment. I look at the peephole. It's my spiritual brother. Oh, okay, cool. I was actually happy to see him. Opened up the door. He said, hey, what's up, brother? Nothing, just hanging out. And he come in, he was like, we talked for about a few things at first, and he was still standing by the door. He said, hey, I just want to let you know that, he said, I don't know why, but God told me to come over here and tell you. He said, whatever you've been praying for, stop. He hears you, and he will answer you. I'm trying not to get choked up because, I know I didn't tell him. Didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell nobody. So how would he know that I was praying for something? And I was doing it daily. Once should have been enough, but I wanted to be sure. I wanted to pray multiple times. I wanted to be sure God moved. And when he said that, it blew me away. He said, yeah, I don't know what you're praying for, but whatever it is, stop. He hears you and he will answer you. I said, all right. And he went on. So I did. And I was like, okay. All right, God. All right, Lord. You heard my prayer. I'm going to leave it alone. I let it go. Within a week or two, that man no longer worked there. That's a blessing to know that God answered my prayer. Wow. I'm going to stop this one for now. It's already at 30 minutes, almost 31 minutes. I will go into more detail about my spiritual walk and what I've experienced. Just leave you with, may God bless you and keep you, and may he give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. And I wish you Godspeed. Blessings.